The story opens in a small, remote frontier town, a place caught between the harsh realities of the prairie and the fragile hopes of those who live there. Dust swirls through the streets, and the sun beats down relentlessly on the wooden buildings that lean under the weight of time. Amid this unforgiving landscape lives a young widow, a woman still mourning her late husband, whose sudden death has left her alone to care for her children. Her home, once a place of laughter and warmth, is now quiet except for the whispers of worry and the cries of her hungry children. The widow's life has been defined by loss, hardship, and perseverance. She is strong, resourceful, and proud, yet the scarcity of food has pushed her to the brink of desperation. For 5 days, her family has gone without a proper meal. Each day, she searches the town, knocking on doors, visiting the market, and pleading with neighbors, but most are struggling as much as she is. Pride battles with necessity, and she hesitates to beg. Yet the gnawing emptiness in her children's bellies forces her hand, the widow's inner struggle between dignity and survival. She represents the countless people of the frontier who live on the edge, relying on ingenuity and sheer grit to endure. Her plea, "Please, we haven't eaten," is more than a request for bread. It is a moment of vulnerability, a surrender of control, and a silent acknowledgement of her human limitations. This sets up the emotional tone of the story, a blend of desperation, hope, and the faint promise of mercy. The setting amplifies her plight. The town is sparsely populated, with wooden buildings separated by dusty roads and windswept fields. Livelihoods depend on crops, cattle, or labor on larger ranches, all of which have been affected by drought, poor soil, or the unpredictability of nature. By placing the widow in such a precarious environment, the narrative heightens the stakes of her journey. Every step she takes toward potential aid is fraught with risk. She might be turned away, mocked, or ignored. Her vulnerability is compounded by the isolation inherent in frontier life, emphasizing that survival here is not guaranteed and that kindness is a rare and precious commodity. Despite the hardship, she retains her dignity and maternal instincts. She worries not only for herself but for her children, making her plea deeply human and relatable. Readers feel her fear and exhaustion, but also her courage. It takes strength to seek help, especially in a world where self-reliance is a survival trait. This duality strength tempered by desperation makes her an engaging protagonist and lays the groundwork for the emotional connection she will later form with the rancher Dot by highlighting the widow's desperation and the emptiness of her surroundings. The story prepares readers for a dramatic turning point, the introduction of a character who embodies both mystery and potential salvation. Her plea is a narrative hook that promises change, drawing readers into the story with empathy and suspense. Will anyone respond to her cries? The rancher. After the widow's desperate plea, the narrative shifts to the edge of a sprawling, sun-scorched ranch, a place both isolated and imposing, reflecting the character of its owner. The rancher is a man of few words, rugged and self-sufficient, whose life has been shaped by hardship, solitude, and the harsh demands of frontier living. His presence establishes a striking contrast to the widow's vulnerability, creating immediate tension and curiosity that propels the story forward. The rancher is portrayed as mysterious and enigmatic. Locals speak of him in hushed tones. Some admire his skill and integrity, others whisper rumors of a troubled past, a heart hardened by loss or betrayal. He is a loner, respected yet distant, a man who guards his emotions as fiercely as he manages his cattle and land. When the widow approaches him, the tension is palpable. The reader understands that while she is desperate for help, this encounter carries uncertainty. Will he respond with kindness, indifference, or rejection? This uncertainty makes the moment charged with dramatic potential. Despite his stoicism, The rancher is guided by an unspoken moral code. His decision to hand the widow a loaf of bread is significant, not only for its immediate practical value but also for what it symbolizes: mercy, empathy, and recognition of shared humanity. In a world where survival often requires self-interest and vigilance, this act of kindness marks him as more than just a rugged frontiersman. It reveals a capacity for compassion that contrasts sharply with his reserved exterior. The bread becomes a tangible symbol of trust, a bridge between two isolated lives, and a catalyst for the emotional arc that will follow. The setting reinforces the rancher's character. The ranch itself is vast and sun-beaten, with rolling fields, weathered barns, and the constant presence of livestock. It is both protective and isolating a domain he commands and depends on, yet one that mirrors his own emotional boundaries. The harshness of the environment emphasizes the difficulty of frontier life and the necessity of resilience, both physical and emotional. The rancher's familiarity with this demanding landscape underscores his competence, self-reliance, and strength, qualities that initially intimidate the widow but ultimately become sources of safety and trust. The widow approaches with caution, aware of her vulnerability and the social dangers of relying on strangers. Meanwhile, the rancher assesses her character, noting her humility, courage, and desperation. Their interaction is quiet but meaningful. He offers aid, she accepts, and in this exchange, a tentative bond begins to form. Dialogue is minimal but loaded with significance, as gestures handing bread, steady eye contact, brief conversation carry weight beyond words. This nuanced communication lays the groundwork for the deeper emotional and romantic development that will unfold later. Both characters wrestle with trust, vulnerability, and the potential consequences of extending or accepting help. The widow must overcome pride and fear of judgment, while the rancher must decide whether to open his solitary world to another human being. This internal tension heightens the story's emotional depth and keeps readers invested in the evolving relationship. The pivotal moment when the widow's desperate plea intersects with the rancher's quiet generosity, deepening their initial connection and setting the emotional foundation for the story. The setting is intimate yet open, the porch of the ranch house as the sun dips toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the rugged landscape. This time and place symbolize both vulnerability and potential. Between the fading light of the day and the darkness of the night lies the possibility of trust and connection. The act of handing over bread, which might seem simple at first glance, carries profound emotional weight. For the widow, accepting the bread is an admission of vulnerability. Her pride and independence have been central to her identity, but the need to survive compels her to let someone else into her world, even if only briefly. This act is not just about physical nourishment, it is a tentative step toward emotional connection, a recognition that she cannot face her hardships entirely alone. The bread becomes a tangible representation of mercy, compassion, and the potential for human kindness in a harsh and unforgiving world. For the rancher, the gesture of offering bread is equally significant. Though outwardly stoic and self-reliant, he is moved by her courage and the evident suffering of her family. The choice to help is deliberate, reflecting both his moral compass and the latent empathy that he rarely expresses. His actions reveal a man shaped by solitude, yet not hardened beyond the capacity for connection. This act of generosity, however small, begins to chip away at the emotional barriers he has built around himself, hinting at his readiness, whether he realizes it or not, to form bonds with another person. The dynamics of their interaction in this scene are subtle but emotionally rich. Dialogue is sparse, allowing gestures, expressions, and shared silence to communicate as much as words. The widow's hesitant gratitude meets the rancher's quiet assurance, and the tension between vulnerability and protection creates a powerful undercurrent. Readers can sense the mutual recognition of humanity and resilience. She sees that he is not indifferent, and he sees that her suffering is real and compelling. Trust is not freely given. It is earned through acts that demonstrate reliability and kindness. By sharing bread, the rancher initiates the first step in a slow-building relationship. The widow, in accepting it, makes a reciprocal choice, acknowledging that she is willing to rely on someone else, at least momentarily. This delicate balance between giving and receiving, between vulnerability and protection, is central to the narrative, reinforcing the human need for connection in even the harshest circumstances. The scene's emotional resonance is amplified by the environment. The warm glow of sunset, the soft rustle of the prairie grass, and the distant calls of livestock create a backdrop that mirrors the character's inner transformation. The vast, isolated landscape highlights the rarity of compassion and trust, making each gesture of kindness more profound. The rancher's porch, simple and sturdy, becomes a small, where the story moves from initial survival and cautious connection toward deeper emotional intimacy. The setting is intimate and private, the quiet of evening around a small fire outside the ranch house. The day's harsh light has faded, leaving only the flickering warmth of the fire to illuminate the faces of the widow and the rancher. This moment creates a safe space for vulnerability, where both characters can begin to reveal the hidden layers of their lives, their griefs, and their desires. The isolation of the ranch amplifies the intimacy. There is no audience, no distractions, allowing their emotional walls to slowly come down. The widow, having already received a gesture of no, begins to trust the rancher enough to share fragments of her own story. She speaks cautiously, revealing the loss of her husband and the struggle of raising her children alone. Her words are tinged with pain, fear, and quiet determination, painting a picture of resilience forged by necessity. Through her storytelling, the reader gains insight into her character. She is courageous, compassionate, and practical, yet her experiences have left her wary of dependence on others. This duality makes her relatable and sympathetic, while also heightening the tension of whether she will allow herself to grow emotionally close to the rancher. The rancher, in turn, begins to open up, though more slowly and subtly. His past is marked by hardship, loss, or betrayal, details that hint at why he has chosen a life of solitude. He may reveal moments of love lost, friendships broken, or difficult decisions made on the ranch, allowing the widow to glimpse the man behind the stoic exterior. His willingness to share these experiences, even partially, is significant. It signals a crack in his emotional armor and a readiness to connect with another human being. Through this exchange, readers see that his strength is not only physical or practical, but also moral and emotional, making him a more rounded, compelling character. The firelight, the quiet prairie night, and the slow rhythm of conversation all serve as symbolic elements in this part. Fire represents warmth, comfort, and the spark of emerging connection. The vast darkness surrounding them mirrors the unknowns in their lives, the fears, losses, and uncertainties that they are only beginning to confront together. The shared space and vulnerability begin to transform their relationship from a transactional or survival-based encounter into a deeply personal, emotional bond, the theme of trust and emotional reciprocity. The bread, given before, is no longer just a symbol of physical nourishment. It now represents the beginning of emotional sustenance as well. By revealing their pasts, both characters take a risk, exposing weaknesses, fears, and long-buried pain. Yet in doing so, they also create the possibility of healing, connection, and mutual support. The narrative tension arises from their uncertainty. Will the other person accept this vulnerability, or will fear and past pain keep them emotionally distant? This tension keeps readers invested, eager to see whether trust and affection will flourish. The widow and rancher have moved beyond superficial interaction. Their shared confessions establish empathy and understanding, laying the foundation for romance and emotional intimacy. The story shifts from simple survival to the exploration of human connection, highlighting how shared experiences of loss, hardship, and resilience can bring two people together. This part deepens the narrative, reinforcing the themes of compassion, trust, and the transformative power of emotional honesty. External challenges that test the budding trust and connection between the widow and the rancher, pushing their relationship into deeper emotional territory. The setting expands beyond the protective walls of the ranch into the vast, unpredictable prairie and the nearby town. The environment itself becomes a character, reflecting both the dangers of frontier life and the challenges inherent in building relationships under pressure. This part heightens tension and illustrates how adversity can accelerate emotional bonds. The story begins with a tangible threat. This could be a severe storm sweeping across the plains, a scarcity of supplies, or a confrontation with a rival townsman or outlaw. The widow and her children are suddenly vulnerable, and the rancher's protection becomes essential. This immediate danger forces the widow to rely on him in a way she had not before, challenging her independence but also highlighting the necessity of human connection. For the rancher, these circumstances compel him to act decisively, demonstrating his competence, courage, and reliability. His strength, both physical and moral, becomes a source of comfort and security, deepening the widow's admiration and trust. The external challenges also mirror their internal struggles. Both characters have been shaped by loss and solitude, and the need to depend on one another evokes fear, hesitation, and vulnerability. Yet, as they navigate the dangers together, they learn to trust each other's judgment and instincts. The widow begins to recognize that reliance is not weakness but a form of mutual support, while the rancher acknowledges that opening his life to another person brings not only risk but also profound reward. These moments of dependence and cooperation strengthen the emotional connection that was seeded before and nurtured. Shared challenges create opportunities for intimate gestures. The rancher shielding the widow from the storm, offering warmth and comfort, or helping her manage practical tasks under pressure. Small acts of care become significant, demonstrating the growing bond between them. The widow sees not just a protector, but a man capable of empathy and tenderness, while the rancher is drawn to her resilience, courage, and capacity for gratitude. This reciprocal recognition transforms their relationship from a simple act of mercy into genuine emotional attachment. The environment continues to play a symbolic role. The harsh prairie, with its unpredictable storms and treacherous terrain, mirrors the challenges they face internally: fears of loss, mistrust, and emotional vulnerability. Navigating these physical and emotional obstacles together reinforces the narrative theme that adversity often strengthens bonds and accelerates intimacy. Their shared experiences foster reliance, understanding, and connection, making their eventual romantic union feel earned and authentic. There is the immediate, tangible danger of the environment or antagonists, which demands action and strategy. Simultaneously, there is the internal conflict, the widow's hesitation to fully depend on someone again, and the rancher's reluctance to allow emotional closeness. These intertwined layers of tension create compelling narrative momentum, keeping readers engaged and invested in the outcome. Every act of courage, every small kindness, becomes more meaningful because it is performed under pressure. The widow's reliance on the rancher and his protective instincts create a bond forged in shared adversity. Their connection is no longer hypothetical, it is tested, proven, and strengthened by real-life challenges. The stage is now set for Part 6, where revelation, emotional honesty, and acceptance will allow them to confront their feelings fully and embark on a new chapter together. Brings the story to its emotional and narrative climax, resolving both the practical and emotional struggles that have defined the widow and the rancher's journey. Set at dawn on the ranch, the scene symbolizes new beginnings, hope, and the promise of a future built on trust, compassion, and love. The landscape mirrors this renewal. The first rays of sunlight illuminate the prairie, bathing the ranch in a golden glow that suggests warmth, clarity, and transformation. This setting reinforces the story's themes of recovery, emotional honesty, and the possibility of happiness after hardship. The pivotal moment in this part is the revelation of the rancher's true name. Throughout the story, his identity has been shrouded in mystery, reflecting his guarded nature and the emotional walls he has built around himself. By finally sharing his name, he offers more than a piece of information. He extends trust, intimacy, and acknowledgement of vulnerability. This act symbolizes a full opening of his heart, signaling that he is ready to embrace connection and partnership. For the widow, learning his name is equally transformative. It validates the bond they have developed and signals that he sees her as someone worthy of trust, not merely a temporary recipient of charity. The exchange of names becomes an emblem of mutual recognition, emotional equality, and the transition from cautious reliance to genuine attachment. This part also emphasizes the emotional culmination of their relationship. Overcoming hardship together, the widow's initial desperation, the rancher's guarded stoicism, and the external challenges of frontier life has forged a deep, resilient bond. Their interactions are now imbued with affection, warmth, and the subtle intimacy of shared understanding. Small gestures, a gentle touch, a reassuring smile, the simple act of holding hands convey emotions that words alone cannot capture. These expressions reflect a relationship that has grown organically, nurtured by shared adversity and acts of compassion, and now blossoms into romantic love. The resolution also addresses the widow's journey from vulnerability to empowerment. While she initially approached the rancher out of desperation, she has gained agency, wisdom, and confidence through her interactions with him. She recognizes the strength in allowing herself to trust and the courage in accepting help without shame. Her emotional evolution complements the rancher's growth. Both characters are transformed by the story's events, ready to embark on a life that balances independence with interdependence. Symbolically, the shared bread motif introduced in earlier parts comes full circle. Originally an act of survival, the bread has evolved into a metaphor for trust, care, and emotional nourishment. Before it represents the sustenance of the heart, the ongoing support, love, and companionship that define their new relationship. The act of sharing, once a necessity, becomes a conscious choice grounded in mutual respect and affection. The widow and rancher, once isolated and burdened by grief and hardship, now face the future together. Plans are made not only for survival but for building a meaningful life, tending the ranch, caring for her children, and nurturing the emotional bond that has grown between them. The narrative leaves readers with the satisfaction of resolution, emphasizing that love, trust, and human connection can emerge even in the harshest of circumstances.